Hi guys, it's me again. Had a couple of queries back asking for a few more fun details about my past. What I thought I'd do this time was dig up a couple of old anecdotes, but they're not actually my anecdotes, they're my mother's anecdotes. She has 47 anecdotes which are all indexed, and we know most of them off by heart because she's repeated them so many times over the years. What I thought I'd do was just pick a couple of fun ones and a few other stories from my fun, not fun, teenage years. The first one which comes to mind is about bullying. Now, if you've ever been in one of those situations where you're like bring a new girlfriend or boyfriend home and then your mother suddenly decides to get out the book of baby photos. This is her equivalent of that one. You're sort of sat down with someone new and mother's there, and then the subject for some reason always comes up, bullying, schools and all that sort of shit. And then she suddenly turns around and says, well, Tim had an incident when he was at school. And then she turns to me and says, do you remember that time when that kiddie came up to you? Now, this is quite an interesting story because an incident did occur when I was about 12 or something like that, when I was walking out of the school and a guy came up to me, I want 10p. Now, I don't know what the currency was of 10p at the time, but that seemed to be the going rate on everything. All bullies demanded 10p. Now it would probably be a tenner or a £20 note, but back then it was 10p. That really was the end of the incident. But in my mother's eyes, it's completely different, because she says, oh, well, when you remember that time when that guy came up to you and demanded money off you, and there was all that incident and everything else. Now, the fun thing about this is, she wasn't actually there. And yet she's convinced herself over the years that she was there at the time when this incident took place. But it's a pure figment of her imagination because it never actually occurred. So what happens now is when she brings this up, most opportunities she possibly can, is she turns around and says, oh, so you remember when that guy came up to you and demanded money? And I said, yes, and then the military turned up and the helicopters came in, followed by the space aliens, and then she actually shuts the fuck up, because I found that's actually the best way to deal with it. Another fun one comes to mind. Now, this is quite an amusing one, because it's again one of those things where someone's got something into their head which is now just so powerful an image that they think it really did happen. This anecdote has been going on for probably the best part of 30 years. It gets better each time I hear it, but it's triggered by a certain thing. It's triggered by Unchained Melody, and the anecdote goes something like this. Ooh, well, I used to have the original record, but when your cousin came round one day, it was on the bed and he sat on it and broke it. But that was before they withdrew the record because it had the original lyrics. And then you ask, original lyrics? And then she turns around and actually says, oh yes, because the lyrics weren't, oh my love, it was, oh my lord, which is quite interesting. Now, you can actually Google this forever and you will find no reference to it at all, because it never existed. Now, let's just have a look back at the lyrics. I've got them here on the iPad. What we'll do is swap in what she thinks the lyrics were to what the lyrics actually are. So the lyrics actually are, oh my love, my darling, I've hungered for your touch. So let's actually put in the lyrics that she had on that original record that got broken. Oh my lord, my darling, I've hungered for your touch. Now, I know some people are very into religion and God and everything else, and that's all fine, each to their own, but you've got to be fucking familiar to turn around to God and say, oh my lord, my darling, I've hungered for your touch. That just doesn't seem quite right somehow. Then you've got a lyric slightly further down. I need your love, God speed your love to me. So if this was about my Lord and then God speed your love to me, then he would actually bring love to himself. Again, quite a tricky subject. I've got a feeling this record and these lyrics never actually existed, and this never occurred. Still, there we go. So, other fun things which happened in my youth? Well, actually, I used to quite enjoy rugby. When I first started it at senior school, we were all taught rugby by this giant Welsh guy, and it was beaten into you, something which now I will never ever forget for the rest of my life, which is the formation of a rugby scrum. It's prop, hooker, prop, wing forward, number 8, wing forward, second row, second row. And I will never ever forget that. It's just ingrained in memory. Very much like those lyrics to Unchained Melody. I used to quite enjoy rugby, and I was okay. I've never made, you know, the England team or anything, but at a junior level, I was pretty good. I had good fun. Never in the scrum, always towards the back, because I could run quite fast and chuck the ball across. All good. Then you turn around and say to your mum, oh, I quite like rugby, I might do the school team and stuff. And then she comes up with another great anecdote to all your friends then who turn up, because you say, oh yeah, Tim likes rugby, he's so small they use him as the ball. So that was the end of that career. Talking of PE, there was actually another incident which probably destroyed my confidence for about 3 years. All my socks in school were grey. Grey, long tight socks that you wore with a school uniform. You know, trousers, blazer. It's before all these modern things where they're all wearing jeans and bloody sweatshirts and all that shit. So we all looked, you know, proper wankers. But for PE, we had to have white socks. I then asked my mother for some white socks. She then turned around and said, oh no, well, I'm not going to a sports shop to buy socks because they're expensive. We're talking about socks here. Just a pair of white socks. I didn't turn around and ask her for a car. It was a pair of fucking socks. This is the woman who then turned around and bought my father a tweed sports jacket for God knows how many pounds from Marks and Spencer's, which he was never going to wear because, as I've said before, he dressed like a troll and it just wouldn't suit him. So she could quite happily spend 100 quid on a fucking jacket that no one would wear, but she wouldn't buy me a pair of fucking white socks. So, what happened? Well, we were on one of our 1,000 shopping trips on the way home from school because she permanently had to go into the newsagent every day because she always required something. On Cold Harbour Road, up by where we lived, there was a shop called Marion Gay. Now, that just proves I've got a fantastic memory. That shop sold knickknacks, sort of lacy things. You don't really see this kind of shop anymore. It's sort of sold things like lace doilies and parts of making dolls and stuff like that. It's a very traditional shop where you had like a wooden counter with wooden drawers in it and all the bits in there. So she suddenly turns around and says, oh, they do girls' socks in there. I'll get you a pair of those because they will be cheaper. So I'm 11. We go into this shop where there's a lady behind the counter who's 185 years old. And my mother says, do you have a pair of white socks? And the lady says, oh yes, we've got these lacy ones here. And she delves into the counter and comes out with a pair of girls' lacy socks. And she buys them because they were only like 50p or something at the time, probably in today's money about 2.8 billion pounds. So for the next 3 years in my PE bag, I have these lacy socks that were never ever worn. Could you imagine what would happen to this pretty face if I'd worn those socks as an 11-year-old boy at PE? I would have got the utter shit beaten out of me. I don't know what the fuck she was thinking. So I then did PE for the next 3 years with no socks, because that was the other alternative. And it used to bugger up my feet, something chronic, because I didn't have any trainers, of course, because she wouldn't buy me any of those either, because they were too expensive in a sports shop. So I actually had a pair of white daps, which were hand-me-down from my sister, which were actually the wrong size. After 3 years, when I'd finally had a fucking enough, I actually, okay, this isn't good, don't recommend it to anyone, but I actually ended up stealing a pair of socks from lost property. I then used those socks for probably the next 2 years at the time I was at school, and used to wash them by hand and everything else, and use those for PE. So there we go. During my time at school for PE, I wore second-hand lost socks and washed them because my mother decided to buy me lacy socks from a girl shop. Yeah, it's no wonder I'm slightly bitter. If you like my video, then please give me a thumbs up. You can subscribe to my channel by clicking on my face, and you can also view my other videos on my channel, see what you think. Please subscribe. Any comments, anything else, please leave in the box below. I'm actually going to make a few videos today, but I'm going to edit them over the coming weeks and probably upload one a week. Some fun stuff coming up is an update on my last month of not drinking. Also, I'm going to do the first part about our Great USA road trip. That's something that me and Jamie are doing in May. So I'll talk to you a little bit about that later on. Thanks for watching.